Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Don, this weekly candle is positively hilarious and looks pretty fucking good. Thank God we were advocating for range low buys last week in earnest and with great clarity, because obviously we made about, 2 billion each, just on perps, not including spot. And our paid group knew it first as well. So I think everyone's winning today.
Yeah, I mean, with the kind of advice you give on the show, you can't really lose. You'd be really stupid if you lost, but that is what it is.
What do you think of this weekly candle? Do you like it?
The high time frames look so good on Bitcoin. Like the monthly and the weekly look so good. And then you look on a daily and that also looks good. So I just fucking send it.
Is there a single scammy time frame right now? Is it like the 1 minute or something?
No, there's literally not a single time frame that is bad now. I mean, right now we're breaking out, right? So like the low time frames, they look strong. The high time frames look insane. This is something we talked about last week, right? Like when you look at the monthly, it's hilarious. Like being bearish is hilarious just based on the fact that, I mean, you had one red candle, and that's why everyone flipped so hilariously bearish last week. And now it's been pretty much fully engulfed, right? And then you go down the time frames, and every single time frame looks insane. So,
Yeah, agreed. I want to talk about this washout because last week I think at least one of the levels you mentioned was the impulse low on the weekly at 90.6. You know, like the first non-breakout candle that you get after a move up. That low is usually a decent target for a sweep. That probably ended up being the best level. And on the daily time frame, it was that same kind of cluster that you still have that cluster presumably at
I do, yeah.
89 or whatever else at 89 to 91 that also formed the bottom. So I think both of those themes were ones we discussed, like the weekly sort of swipe level, if you will, and then also just like sub 90k round number. And it's always funny when this kind of stuff works, because people think it always has to be very complicated when it comes to, it's like a market maker, liquidity grab, whatever. Just start basically inventing demonstrably false narratives about market microstructure to like justify the fact that you're trading, you're drawing on TradingView and risking your money on it, which is a completely fine thing to do. But you don't need to make it sound smarter than it has to be, right? In reality, that there are pretty good empirical papers written about this kind of stuff. I think one of them is titled something like "Why is order flow so persistent?" or something of that nature. And that paper talks about these types of things, which is, for example, order herding and order clustering, right? Like, especially if you have a strong retail base of traders, they will just put their orders around round numbers or at round numbers. There's something sort of psychologically appealing there. It serves as a nice anchor. Our ape brains just really like the sort of symmetry that it presents and the fact that it's clean. And so as a result, you'll often see with these round numbers, there's a lot of order herding and order clustering done around there, which basically just means a lot of people have orders around those prices. And when you get those types of crowded areas, that's where you're likely to get your trap type setups or just a lot of sloppy participation, for lack of a better term. And you get that with swing highs and swing lows for the same reason. They kind of stand out, if you will, so people just trade around them because it catches a lot of eyeballs, and eyeballs equals orders in many cases. Even if it's not eyeballs like humans, like even if you're trading sort of systematically, algorithmically, quantitatively, whatever, a lot of the time you'll still have those kinds of reference points, like new high, new low, previous day's high, previous day's low, even for like short-term momentum strategies or whatever else. Like the market always needs something to anchor itself on, and that's all of that is a very long way to say that, as unsophisticated as it may sound, just talking about round numbers for trading and like, the people who have their stops at 90k gonna get washed out, etc. There are like very simple but effective reasons for why that kind of stuff works. Yeah. And that's basically what we had, right? Whether you take the weekly level, whether you take the cluster, whether you take the round number, it all kind of coalesced around sub 90k. And that's exactly where the market wicked. I will say though, Don, maybe I'm becoming a greedy piece of shit, because I thought it would at least retrace some portion of that wick or spend the next day being weaker, essentially. I don't love these types of super long wick specific candles and entering immediately afterwards. I quite like to see, the conviction of those bottom buyers get tested a little bit on average, like the wick refill stuff. I've read them out before, but on this occasion, that seemed that seemed to be more than enough, and it fucking sent. So I'm gonna shut up now. What do you think of all that?
No, I mean, I totally agree. I think the reason why it didn't retest is just because it's that strong. Like for me, that's a bullish signal. I do prefer, like when I'm looking for an entry, I do prefer when it kind of retests at like that kind of area again, usually, because I mean you're sitting on your hands, you want that. But as someone that is already in position, I actually like this better, just based on the fact that it shows strength to me. Like, and people always make this very complicated, right? And they're like, oh yeah, a retest means it's bullish. And to me, and there's something we've talked about on this show a lot, to me, the most bullish thing is if shit just sends, right? And it's obvious when you hear it like that, but people always look for weakness to buy, like to get their retests, whatever. Whereas like this kind of thing to me is more strength. It's just obviously shitty if you want an entry and you didn't get it on the washout itself, right? For someone that is already in position, this is perfect. For someone that wasn't in position, this is obviously like worse, just because the risk to reward and like the setup itself is harder to nail. So it kind of like it depends on where you're standing. Like as someone that's just been holding, this is perfect. Like I like this a lot. Makes me more bullish even, because you know that a bunch of people were waiting for that exact same thing, and they didn't get it, and then they have to chase up. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing in the last couple of days.
Or if you got liquidated on that move, and there was a decent chunk, in terms of open interest liquidations in general. I mean, you could see just by the wick, there's a lot of people who were trading who didn't want to be trading. The margin system and the liquidation engine was doing it for them at that point. But all of that contributes to how sharp of a reversal you get. People having to cover, people having to buy back positions, all those types of things affect the price action that you get. But I mean, all in all, it's a pretty. I mean, you can't really ask for a better reaction to a range low test / washout, right?
Yeah.
Like if you compare that to the, we spoke quite a bit about the 60k range low last week, and in most cases that the bounces there were quite weak-ish for the most part, especially as things progressed, like in the early part of the range, and then it took like a real washout, like a scary looking one to the 52 level before, and even after that washout, it was a piece of shit. Like it was just a really miserable trading period. Like imagine entering that with conviction, like 52k or whatever, and then you have to hold for like months before it really does anything, and it's ranging in the meantime. Whereas this, the range is both shorter, and it's only really had one test, I would say. One test that actually cleans up, if you will, when it comes to previous month's low, weekly lows, etc. And it's basically hugging the all-time high already. Does all of that support the idea that what you mentioned previously, this is strength? And also, do you think comparisons with the previous range and this range are now moot, given the reaction strength and how quickly it seems to be resolving?
Yeah, I mean, it just looks like this washout was enough. Like we tried at 60k, we tried a couple times to wash people out, and it didn't work until we broke 50k, and that seemed to have been enough. In this case, apparently, and I think it's a little bit to do with that Trump is getting in power. I mean, it's just a little bit of a news trade of sorts, so I'd be careful. Like if this breaks out, I'd be careful with how the market acts once the news is basically, like, it's not really news, obviously, but once Trump is in power, I think that's going to be interesting. I could see if the market runs too hard now, I could see us actually dipping on it. I said last week, like if this market dumps right before Trump gets into power, I think it's going to send after. I'd be a little bit careful with breakout buys right before Trump comes into power, like the inauguration or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Like that would be scary to me, buying into a breakout that goes into that event.
Yeah, but you're scared of every breakout buy, Don. You know.
I mean, yes, but this one is especially scary because like you don't want to be buying into a breakout that is an event trade of sorts, right? Like to me, that's the worst breakout to buy. But I mean, if you're already positioned, doesn't really matter. Like, just fucking send it. I'm gonna continue being bullish until the chart actually looks like shit. And for that, probably gonna have to miss the top, right? Like it happened in 2020, 2021,
Yeah.
where we had where I was still like, hey, assume it's bullish until it's proven not, even when we're trading at 60, 70K, right? And then when it went back below 60K, I was like, okay, I mean, now that's just not how the breakout should have happened, right? Like,
Yes.
this is not it. And so, like, with that attitude, you're probably not going to sell the top, but you don't really have to, right? Like, I don't think anyone complained in back then that they sold 60 instead of 70K. I think people complained that they didn't sell 60 or 70 and that they then sold at 20 or 30K instead. And so I think that's worthwhile, like, just because it's so hard to guess where this market goes, right? Just generally in crypto, even if you look at the altcoins, right? Like, guessing the tops when they actually start sending is so hard. Like, you can tell when it's getting hot, and then you sell, and then it free access the next day, and then that's the top, and then it retraces like 50%, but it's still above where you sold, right? Like that kind of stuff happens a lot in crypto, and that's why, like, I think oftentimes like guessing the exact top is a little bit of a fool's game.
Yeah,
So
it's
I'm
something
not
I
saying,
wrote. I completely agree. It's something I wrote
yeah.
about as well. And to your point about 50, I remember selling at like 58, 59K ish, at least a
Yeah.
decent chunk. And I felt like a fucking idiot at the time, right? Like, it's obvious now with hindsight bias, you can say, oh, it was an amazing exit. Look how low it went. But at the time, you feel like an absolute cunt because if you look at how much it's down from the top when the failed breakout kind of becomes available, depending on what anchors you use, the market's already down like what 20+%. Maybe 15 to 20% by the time the failed breakout forms on the high time frame, and you feel like an absolute mug because, as you can imagine, sentiment at the time, as you remember, you need to imagine because we were there, but for the audience's sake, the sentiment at the time, there was still the standard army of bulls, right? Being like, oh, this is just a pullback. Like, we're at all-time high. What the fuck you mean, like, bear market or pullback? This is just a retest. You should thank your lucky stars, essentially, that it's being given to you, and then you end up getting shafted. So, like, in the moment, 10, 15, 20% from the top feels really late, but it's only after, if you're right, you save your ass and see what happens to the market, do you realize that it's actually a fucking fantastic exit in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the game you're playing with this kind of trailing approach that you've talked about, where you don't actively have like a specific price or a specific level or a specific market cap. You more wait for sort of signs of weakness. The thing is, you still need to wait for those signs of weakness, which means they need to form, and by definition, it'll be at a lower price than the top, because the top isn't going to be weak per se, outside of some weird stuff, like maybe there's some amazing news and doesn't do anything, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's when you get gifts, but that's rare. Like,
yeah, absolutely. So like, yeah, the whole selling the top thing is fucked. It's really difficult, and honestly, like, I think more money is lost in the trading that follows the top than in the top itself, right? When you buy that first pullback and you get fucking liquidated, you start making it back on margin. Like, the surface area for compound errors after the top has already taken place there's just so much room for error in those cases. And I think that's where a lot of people actually, go from like a small hit, be like, I missed the top, but whatever, I'm in a good spot now, to, oh my God, like 40% of my account is gone, and, in the 2-3 week time frame, without all too much changing on the higher time frame. So I agree, shit is not simple. But on this occasion, yeah, I mean, the weekly chart looks kind of fucking mental. Do you still think there's any validity in... I mean, this weekly cluster served you well as resistance initially, the top part of it at 98k. Do you think, is that still a useful level, or would going back there be rough? You just want this thing to melt up already?
I think if Trump comes into power and we retest that, that's kind of fine.
Okay.
So I would keep that level around.
Is that
Just
your
because,
updated invalidation, by the way? Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, I think like losing that would start looking really shit. And if we send, I could move that level higher, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it could be like the highest cluster that we have right now, like at like 104, like it's just the highest close candle,
Yes.
like 104 to like whatever. Like if we move to 110, 120, I could see that be the new support because it might be a little bit more clean. But yeah, we'll see.
Were there any other interesting comments about the weekly time frame?
Nah. I mean,
Seems
there's
pretty
really
straightforward.
nothing. The thing is just like it's literally like it's such a funny chart. Like it's straight up from 16K to 30K. Then we had a tiny pullback. Then it's 25 to 70K. Then we had a tiny pullback, and then it's 50K to 100K. And now we're kind of like putting in like a little bit of a range, a little bit of pullback again. Like that's an absurd chart,
Yeah, the
honestly.
chart is ridiculous.
And it's going, I mean, it's going parabolic, right? Like you look at that and it's clearly starting to go parabolic now. But guessing like the tops of those is really hard. So just let it play out, see how it goes. I don't really see anything that strikes me as, okay, you have to watch this on the weekly because we're so high up now that there's no past resistance. But we also haven't really done anything that would kind of like where I'm like, oh, this is just bad. So far, so good, basically.
Yeah, I mean that seems very fair. I will say you mentioned like the event risk when it comes to. By the way, sorry if I sound like shit and speak like shit. I am sick as usual, so forgive me. In any case, you mentioned like the weekly time frame being an potential event trade based on price action around the inauguration or whatever. I will say that the Trump event trades have been like pretty sticky, right? Like obviously it's
Yes.
not just that, and there are other flows that happen at the same time, and it's never just about one thing necessarily. But like the breakout trade was essentially an election news trade, right? Like what
Yeah.
got us out of the range, 71K, and we didn't come fucking close to retesting that at any point.
Oh,
And
and Trump keeps making bigger and bigger promises, right? Like
yes,
because I think like, and sorry to interrupt,
no,
I
no, go
think
on.
just generally like what Trump's done basically, and I mean how a lot of people looked at Trump was basically like, okay, he is just saying this to get the crypto voters, right? Like that's how it looked like at first, and it's not like that's very unlike him. Like Trump is someone that could use something like that to in his favor. But turns out, like afterwards, he kept talking about crypto, and he keeps talking more and more about crypto, which basically emboldens people in thinking, okay, maybe he's just not saying that just to get the presidency, but he's actually saying it and actually means it. And he's made some comments where he was like, I want to see Bitcoin go to like 150K shortly after I become president. And so now he's kind of tied the success of crypto to his presidency. And I think a lot of people are kind of speculating on that. And that's why it's maintaining so well, even though it's kind of a news trade. It's just basically like Trump seems to be holding up his promises so far, or at least like, I mean, it'd be weird, right? Like if he wanted to kind of like just ignore crypto, if he made comments after he won the election, because then he just looks like an idiot, right? So I think he's probably just going to stick with it. And the more confident people are getting in that, the more people realize that the future president of the United States is probably, and we've seen him shield stocks on live TV, right? Like where he was just rattling off stock names that he liked. Where he
It's
was
like
like,
McAfee coin of the day, just with stocks.
yeah, and he did this during COVID, right? And people are like, maybe he does this with crypto, right? And I would not be shocked, right? Like I see, if I if I think about it and I see crypto going up, right? Like Trump would 100%, that's just the person he is, he would want to take credit for it, right? And then he would be like, I could see him go on live TV in the White House saying like, hey, American crypto, like Solana, XRP, like all of the American cryptos, they're doing so well because of me. They're up like 200%. Like I could literally see him do that, and I think a lot of people are coming around to the idea of the president of the United States kind of shilling cryptos from the White House, and I think it's kind of what's starting to get priced in, or slash is already priced in a lot. I think without that, we would have retraced a lot of the move, but with him just getting more and more bold around the crypto claims that he's making, has people just more and more kind of like, okay, let's just bet on this because it's the president of the United States. He has some power, and he could chill
And
this
ego
shit.
as well,
Yeah.
right? Like if he ties himself to this thing, he'll, and it's the crime cycle essentially. You know, he's clearly not against shilling in his own interests if he thinks he'll make him look good. It is interesting though how, you know, initially we had Trump election win as a big catalyst for the breakout, and then Saylor single-handedly carried the market on top of that. And then there was a tiny dip around, oh, it's like the blackout period, MicroStrategy, whatever, and then we just go straight back to Trump as for lifting the market essentially. And it's like fucking playing ping pong between those two, right? Where it's Trump on the election win hands the baton to Saylor. Saylor is in blackout, handed it back over to Trump for, you know, fucking taking pictures with Brad Garlic House.
Yeah.
Never a dull day. It's not Garlic House, is it? Is that a meme name? I'm pretty sure it's. Wait, is it?
I think it is.
Oh my god. Okay, I thought. Wait, what?
Garling House.
Is it Garlic House?
Maybe. No, it's not Garling. It's Garling House or something.
It got to be Garling House. Yeah, it is Garling House. Yeah, because I remember in 2017 we called them Brad Garlic Bread or some shit.
Yeah.
So I've just clearly synthesized the two there.
You don't want to put that on record. Who knows? Who knows where he's gonna end up?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Mr. Garling House, you know, Garling, garlic, whatever. Just keep XRP price going up for
You said it and no alarm clocks went off in my head. I was like, yeah, I mean, that sounds
about right. Totally normal. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I don't think, honestly, like BTC TA-wise, there's really not much to say, right? Proximity to all-time high, the washout worked. I think it's a decent place to have an update in validation if you're really high time frame swing trading this. Because washouts shouldn't get retested. Obviously, it's wide as fuck now, but that would essentially mean really conservatively previous month's low, previous week, well, this month's low, and this week's low at 89k, essentially. But you obviously get, I think you'll get a ton of warning signals before that if it starts turning to shit. A couple of them might be if it breaks the all-time high and then has like a really shit reaction, especially if it does it around the inauguration. I think that's your first kind of red flag. And the second one would I think would just be sort of lethargic breakout or even lack of a breakout, and it kind of stays range bound. Anything, but I'm just eyeballing this, but let me know what you think. Anything below like, well, 100k realistically. Again, that same anchor, because there's like a couple of, you know, non-trivial levels there. You know, we faked out above there once. You know, it was the last resistance before we shot up. I think those two levels for a sort of health checking this thing make a lot of sense. If you're going to be really wide, 89k, because the low shouldn't get swept after a sweep. If you're more active in managing how this range is going to play out, I think 100k-ish round number for all the same reasons, with some market structure buffer is decent as well. Otherwise, it's pretty much all-time, well, breakout watch, and then how the market reacts around the inauguration. But so far, so good. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I just look at the daily time frame, and I think like 99k, just because it's like kind of the prior top of the range. We've interacted with it a bunch.
Yeah.
It's nice because it is away from the 100k mark. So if it does the same thing that it did at 90k, where it just very, very likely undercuts it, you'd still be fine there. And then, short term, I think that's a good invalidation. Just basically, you don't want to lose what we've gained today. But yeah, we're heading into a news event, like I said, so could see that get stopped out anyway. And then maybe it still goes up, but that's just kind of how it goes when you're heading into a news event, right? Like just generally.
Sorry, I thought you disconnected for a sec. My bad. Did you? Oh my god, we lost Don. Ending the show. It's useless now. But yes, inauguration coming up. Just to summarize, I think this is where the 99k range high comes from. As Don said, it's quite nice that it's away from the 100k round number if you're into that sort of stuff. But realistically, like last week, the argument was that the interesting areas to trade are some version of a washout the range low, and we got that, or like a proper breakout. And the breakout is cooking at the moment, so your areas to do business, I think, would be around the all-time high, or if there's any type of pullback to get a sense of how this range is going to resolve, as Don mentioned, around 99k. Realistically, the market will look materially different if we manage to get all the way down to the range low, and I think anything good can happen there necessarily. I mean, maybe we spend more time there 60k style, but that's just a whole different beast. And I don't think it'll take as long given it's pretty news driven. So realistically, focus for the week would be update in validation if you're being aggressive and following the strength 99k, and then as usual, breakout / all-time high watch at around 100k. And don't worry, I'll bring the duck back in a sec. You disconnected. You can tell we put a lot of budget into editing this kind of stuff. In any case, that's kind of it for BTC. Hope that was helpful. Let's take a look at ETH. On the ETH BTC front, I'm sure Don has a new version of Cope for the monthly. It hasn't closed yet. There are still 2 weeks left, etc., etc. I think this was his last-ditch effort, and at the moment, that 3.5 level is looking like a, more of a support break into resistance than anything else. Now, yes, it could get rescued. It could do this, could do that, but I think, my personal bandwidth for a while now of excuses for ETH BTC is basically near zero. So I don't want to carry water for this thing unless it can go up for more than a couple of weeks in a row. And I mean, look at the periods where we've had 2 green weeks in ETH BTC. I mean, this entire downtrend, it's been pretty rough. Yes, you're back.
Oh God, I don't know what happened.
I don't know either. Do you know how naked I felt trying to do this show on my own? Completely inappropriate.
Dude, I know exactly how you feel when you're like, shit, now I have to do a 2-man job
I have to talk
alone.
And say stuff. Don't worry, I was just like GPT summarizing what you said, since I'm clearly incapable of thoughts of my own. But yeah, TLDR, you can get a sense for how this range is going to play out at 99k if it pulls back. Otherwise, it's all-time high watch. Just be a bit careful because inauguration is an important date. So even if it's not an explicit news trade, it still kind of matters, and it'll give you some sense of how the market's positioned into it, really.
Yeah, well said.
I mean, the focus is basically shifted. Like last week, it was like, the good areas to do business, probably the range low washout or the breakout portion. And we had the range low washout now, and we're on the other side, essentially. Yeah, cool.
Bitcoin looks so good that there's really not that much to say. Just
there really
send
isn't,
it.
Yeah.
Like send it, and then if it starts, like if the breakout fails, whatever, then you can talk about it.
Yes.
Let the news pass, basically, see how that goes. But I only see the bullish side. Like I cannot imagine shorting anything here.
Double
and
top.
This could,
that classic meme.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could be the top, whatever. But I still think even if it is, it's just not a good trade. Like I don't see how that makes a lot of sense. Like I think most of the time you're just losing a bunch of money. I'd rather be the idiot that has held a little bit too long and then gets the weakness after like a 10% down move, rather than be like the person that's just shorting willy-nilly just because I think the price should be lower. Don't really see a setup for it.
Yeah, very, very reasonable. That's it for BTC. I think we're doing a disservice to just try and make more stuff up. There are basically 2 levels that matter and 1 news event. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I started ragging on ETH BTC. I had to take advantage of the fact that you weren't here.
Cannot believe it. Yeah. Looks like shit.
But can you blame me? Is what I'm saying. Because yeah, I mean the weekly. This might be one of the worst looking weekly charts in crypto. It's
awful.
It's really
awful.
This has to violate some European convention somewhere, Hague, Geneva, like all these countries with unenforceable human rights standards. Like, where are they when I'm looking at this chart? Because
it's not right. It's just not right. If I wasn't holding a bunch of XRP, I'd be out of my mind watching this shit, because I'm awful. Like, just generally, I feel like a lot of people have been like disillusioned by it.
Oh, for sure.
And maybe it needs an explosive ending, right? Maybe it needs to nuke a bunch and liquidate a bunch of ETH bulls, the last one that are remaining, before like completely sending it. I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting one anyway. Like I look at ETH BTC, I look at it only on the monthly, like out of the monthly lens. We have 2 weeks left, and we're trading quite significantly below the only monthly support that I have left. that is actually decent. I mean, you can make a new one lower, but that's like what, like 25% lower even. And at that point, like it's retraced the entire bull market gains. It's not great. So is what it is.
Yeah.
It needs to put some strength in soon.
What's your next monthly cope? That's my question, because this one level
Oh,
managed to bait you quite nicely, but you need to update it.
yeah, I mean, next monthly level cope is 0.025.
Where the fuck is that? Oh, like the bottom of the range, basically.
Yeah, which is not great. Like, you don't want to see us go in there. I mean, right now it's only down like 5 to 10% from that monthly level. But still, like, it's not great. Like,
Yeah, but the last time it got quote unquote rescued at that level, it just went down. Like,
Yeah.
fuck all happened. You know, this thing is allergic to support, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's still too early for it. We're still in the like everything else pump stages. I generally think there's a good chance that ETH pumps at the end of the bull market, like when everything's topped already, and basically goes down less than the rest. And that's like everyone is still gonna be miserable because it's still gonna go down. It's kind of the idea that I have now, where it's like the moment ETH starts pumping, we're probably already at the top for Bitcoin.
Okay, interesting.
And then you basically get like a bunch of ETH BTC gain ground. You bounce on that quite aggressively, but like on the USD front, it's not as good as it could be. And then the bear market hits and everything goes down a shitload, and ETH's just going down, but slower. I kind of feel like that's the role that ETH's playing right now.
So it's like inverse Dino coins. It pumps, just basically pumps last. Except Dino coins have been strong.
Yeah. I mean, Dino coin's been excellent.
It's like in the past, obviously, when Dino coins would start pumping, that would be seen as a late in the cycle signal because we've like literally run out of stuff to pump and we're going after anything that has a listing at that point as a sign of the market being spread very thin or just there being a lot of froth, etc. So you're saying that role could potentially go over to ETH now because the thing that's just not pumped in relative terms, at least, and relative to previous cycles, the whole bull market, when we decide to take our risk there, that's a real sort of active exuberance, right?
I could actually see that.
Okay.
I generally still like ETH. I don't like, people are really hating on it, and I'm guessing, I mean, if you're all in ETH, I kind of get it. It's not necessarily the most fun, especially if you've been all in ETH for a while, as some of CT people have done, I guess. But just generally, like, I like ETH, I like Vitalik, I like them much more than the alternatives that are around, right? The alternatives to ETH, not the alternatives, like, I mean, Bitcoin. Honestly, like, even the Bitcoin devs, it's just fucking annoying, like, awful.
I mean, the ones with the Twitter presence, I'm sure there are a lot of Chad maintainer, Cypherpunk,
obviously, but like, you really, really don't want to look at Bitcoin Core on Twitter. Like, you just really don't. Like, don't do it. It's gonna make you bearish. It's awful what you're seeing there. I think one of the only few sane people that isn't completely greedy is Vitalik, but that doesn't really help the holders, right? Because the problem is that this is the crime cycle, and you need crime for things to go up. And I don't necessarily think he's morally corrupt, or like just generally like the ETH people are morally corrupt enough to take advantage of the fact that we can now do crime if we want to. It's like us, basically. Like, we're not morally corrupt enough to take advantage of the new environment, right? Like, we're not gonna make a coin and rug people because we're just like, we pretend to be righteous people, right?
Sure.
So, like, and I think that's ETH, basically, like, not gonna take advantage of the situation, which I generally think is quite like a good thing. I would hate for ETH to be one of those, like, just disgusting, like, sucking up, generally, like, opportunistic fucks, basically. Like, I don't like those. But just generally, if you want your stuff to go up, that's what you want, right? And that's why I'm saying crime cycle, because I know that the XRP people, they're gonna do that. They have no problem doing that. I know that the Solana people, for example, no problem doing that. I know that like a shitload of other coins, they have no problem doing it. And I mean, that's a bullish thing. That's what you want if you want your stuff to go up. And ETH is doing none of that, which is price-wise shit. Generally, I like it for the longevity of it. I also like it, but that doesn't really help you if you want to make money in the short term.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look. If your prognosis or what you outlined for ETH plays out, would actually be the worst bull market for ETH ever, because you underperform the entire time for taking more risk, and then when it finally pumps, you're still down horrendously in relative terms. Plus, it's the harbinger of doom for the cycle. I mean, you kind of lose on both ends. So I don't know to what extent that's going to play out, but that'd be probably the worst ETH bull market ever if that comes to fruition. It already has been to some extent the worst ETH bull market ever. So yeah, I don't know. Nothing. I mean, I think one of the worst parts about this is the time component. Like, this thing isn't even affording you the luxury of fucking you quickly and just ripping the band-aid off and taking all your money. It's just week by week by week, month by month, underperformance, breakdown, lower high, like just absolutely miserable. And those kind of,
I mean,
yeah, go on.
Like if you held this during the bear market, right, you're still better off than most other people. It's just you've just been like other people got wrecked 90%, like they got like rug pulled 95%, and then their coin went up again. And ETH was like, oh, I'm down 10%, I'm down 20%, I'm down 25%, I'm down 30%, and then it's down 50%. People are like, fuck this, like this, like every month that I log into any of my apps, this shit is down. Whereas the other stuff was just down for 3 months and it was down 95%. And then it started going back up again. And it's now at comparable levels to ETH, I think. It's just, I mean, I think one of them is actually much more painful, and that's ETH. And I think that's where a lot of the hate comes from. Like, just like every time you look, it's down, it's like awful. Even if it's down less than something else, like you'd rather have this thing go to zero and then start bouncing again over what it's doing, which is really fun.
I mean, the expectations is what makes it painful as well, because we know it's like a very crowded, still trade like on the long side. And also, like, historically, you were just like a long ETH when crypto's going up because it would outperform, like, generally speaking, right? You're like, oh, BTC is the boomer coin, ETH is like where the speculation, innovation, etc. goes. And so not only is it down, like the ETH BTC chart is horrendous, but relative to expectations and like previous precedent, like what it means to be an ETH holder in a bull market, those are like worlds apart, essentially. That's what makes it extra tough. But there is an element of complacency there, right? Like, oh, ETH always goes up and ETH always outperforms. I'll buy ETH. I mean,
yeah, it really doesn't have to. Yeah,
it doesn't have to.
We talked about, like, I remember like having this discussion like a year or 2 or 3 ago, where it was like, I don't know, like I said, literally, like, I don't know where people have this confidence from that it's always like that you can say Bitcoin and ETH and all the other altcoins. Because I was always like, hey, it's Bitcoin, and then you have altcoins, of which ETH is the biggest one, right? And I still maintain this, like, the confidence that people have. It's the same with Solana now, right? Where Solana people are like, yeah, you have Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana. I'm like, you guys are on crack. You cannot put those three on the same level. Like, Bitcoin is clearly far ahead of both ETH and Solana. If you want to do like the comparison between, like, hey, you have Bitcoin and then you have altcoins, of which ETH and Solana are the biggest one, I mean, fair enough. It's not true, because XRP is like starting to overtake fucking ETH, and Solana it overtook Solana like a while ago. But still, like, at that point, I can kind of be like, okay, you can put ETH and Solana on a similar level, but you cannot really put them in the same basket as Bitcoin. There's going to be another bear market eventually, and then you're going to be very, very surprised if you think that you have like the blue chips and that they're going to save you. I don't think so. Bitcoin's the only thing that cycle on cycle doesn't have those horrendous like 90% drawdowns. The other coins, like, they go down during bear markets, and then nothing special. Like, they're all just basically, you trade them during the bull market, and then you have to avoid being convinced that they are the future, because if you do get convinced, I mean, you see what's happening to ETH right now, right? You've basically been losing money for like what? Like, how long has this range gone with the breakdown? It's been 1,300 days, so like 4 years now, where you've been losing against Bitcoin on ETH. And this is kind of what's happened, like what's going to happen to pretty much any altcoin in my books. So like, I just want to make sure people, like, that's my opinion. Obviously, I could be wrong. But I just think don't put things on the same level as Bitcoin. It's just not how it is.
Well, I think it's one of the most dishonest arguments we see all the time by like altcoin shillers. They're like, oh, look at BTC last bear market, bro. It also went down like this much. It's no different from shitcoin in which they have allocation. And no one ever cares to mention like what happens afterwards, right? BTC comes back and makes a new all-time high every single time thus far, whereas almost every single altcoin never does, and most of the ones being used for those arguments just fade into obscurity and go to zero.
Yeah.
Like there has to be a reason you're buying something when it's down 60-70%, because at that point there's like a really non-trivial chance it like actually goes to zero. You know, the probabilities start going up like disproportionately at those types of drawdowns, and so you need like a really good reason to get involved. And BTC, I think, gives you that historical, empirical, intellectual cover or whatever to be like, I think there's something stronger at play here, and this is normal for this asset class, yada yada yada. But the average altcoin, I think, should give you the opposite. You just assume it's fucking done. Obviously, there are exceptions, like, you know, a lot of these new coin, meme coin. Well, back when, you know, there used to be decent price action, a fair bit of them. You would get 60 to 80% drawdowns like super early on its way to a more moderate market cap. Like that, I understand. But in general, you can't have a multi-cycle view of altcoins. I don't think history supports it. You know, we got some flack in the comments for last week's episode, and we're grateful for all feedback. We do read it. But, you know, there was like, oh, you guys like wasted so much breath on like talking about altcoins went down, like we know this, etc. And like I don't know, like I kind of refuse to be gaslit on this point. I don't think people grasped exactly how fucking strong and outrageous the sentiment was at the time. And the prevailing wisdom, including lots of fucking VCs and philosophical threads and general consensus view that this is like a new way of doing altcoins because they aren't VC bags and they're supposedly so organic, etc. Like, you were the bad guy. I mean, you're a bad guy for many reasons. I mean, like, in general, one was the bad guy for making arguments that these are just altcoins, right? Like, yeah, they're hot right now, but people get bored.
You're talking about meme coins,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I understand it was, you know, potentially boring, repetitive, etc. But like, for historical purposes, I think it's important to document just how fucking outrageous sentiment was around that type of stuff. It literally, the average participant felt like we'd kind of just fixed altcoins. Like, oh, we got rid of the VCs and now it's like community owned and it's just going to go up now because there's no one dumping on your heads. And people, every cycle, people make exceptions for their specific altcoin, which I understand. But this cycle, they're making exceptions for like a whole sector as well as their specific altcoin. And that was, I think it was almost like a shift in terms of how people viewed these assets, and I think it was justified. That's why we spent so much time talking about it, because it was so fucking absurd and so consensus at the same time.
Yeah. Good times.
Good times.
I mean,
Doge is up 10%, Don, so shut up.
Yeah. I mean, I bull posted Dogecoin at the Pico bottom.
Oh, you bull posted? Can you pay your rent with those?
my cloud rent, I can
your cloud
pay
rent,
with that. No, I genuinely think meme coins, right? Like, Dogecoin is the Bitcoin of meme coins.
Sure.
And if Dogecoin goes up, like, and it's something that I've said multiple times, you can allocate to your favorite dog shit meme coin, and you're probably gonna make money if you're right on Doge, right? Like, it's just generally like people see Dogecoin up and they're like, okay, let me get exposure, and then the moment Dogecoin goes back down again, you want to get out of your meme coin as well. That's kind of how I look at them. That's why I'm like, I've been bullish Dogecoin now for a while, since basically 0.27, it's monthly support, and it's up like 50% since. And therefore, I'm not too bearish on memes just generally, because Dogecoin's going up, so there's a good chance that they catch a bit. But just generally, those things will go to zero over the long run, in my opinion. It's just like, when Dogecoin's pumping, why would you want to fade like that entire sector, right? It's like, if Bitcoin is pumping, you don't necessarily want to just start looking for shorts on any of the altcoins, because at the end of the day, like, even if they might go up less than Bitcoin, they're probably still going to go up, right? And the same is true for the memes. Just want to add that because otherwise it sounds like we're hilariously bearish memes, which I mean, long run I am, but short term could see them like do quite well. Should we talk about? Yeah, should we talk about XRP?
Yes, go on. Also, you're holding XRP shitcoins, right?
I have XRP and XRP shitcoins, yeah, but the XRP shitcoins is not that much, or was not that much, and it went up a bunch, and it's like now it's like a little bit more, but yeah, it's both.
I mean, what is to say about this thing? It consolidated for ages and then fucking sent. It looks like the Bitcoin 70k breakout, essentially.
I mean,
just nicer.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's literally just the best looking chart in crypto. Which
the 4 hour is actually hilarious. It just went vertical. It's like a straight line, basically.
I mean, look at the monthly on XRP USD. Like, it's absurd. Like, what the fuck? Like, nothing, and then just 3 months of upside. Like you said, the 4 hours just like legit. Like, if you zoom out a little bit, it's just straight up consolidation, starts going straight up. I mean, it's just hilariously bullish to me, and I generally think it's positioned quite well to run even harder, like go up even more. And I mean, I'm looking at like meme numbers now because we're breaking the all-time high, right? Like it broke the Bitstamp all-time high. I know that there's a bunch more on other exchanges where it wicked higher, but just generally broke the Bitstamp all-time high. Which is quite rare, like generally speaking, like, yes. And I think the USD pair is like not that interesting in comparison to the Bitcoin pair. Like if you go on the XRP BTC pair, like it's so rare that you see something cycle over cycle over cycle keep up with Bitcoin, right? And that's what XRP's like clearly been doing. And I said this when we were trading at the range low, and I'm saying it now, like that's insane. Like this is a range from 2013. And we're in the middle of it.
Which price feed are you using, by the way, for XRP BTC?
XRP BTC, even Binance has it. For some reason, they have history.
Oh, they've got a fair bit of history, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Binance was around back then, but they were just like imported the history from someone else. But I mean, that's insane, right? Like 2013. So there's something, and that's XRP, that is out there that has just kept pace with Bitcoin since 2013. ETH's done something similar, just short-term time frame, like ETH's up since 2015, whatever. Mm-hmm. But XRP's up since basically almost the beginning, or like in a range, which I find quite hilarious because on top of that, it's been like whenever it's been close to the range low, you've just got all the gains that Bitcoin's made in the entire cycle in just a month or 2 or 3.
Yeah,
right?
The speed of it is unreal. Every time as well.
Like that's nuts when you think about it. Like because I mean, I traded Bitcoin. I was bullish Bitcoin 16K. I traded that on the long side upwards. Obviously didn't capture all of the move, but still was quite happy with that trade, right? And XRP didn't move up at all during that time. And then I bought XRP and got basically the Bitcoin move again, just on XRP this time, which is just fucking hilarious. Like that's exactly what you want as a trader, and that's what XRP is giving. And I think there's more room. I mean, the cycle, like the range high, to me is like at like 8,347. So like a little bit more than a 2x on XRP BTC away. I think that is possible. Doesn't have to happen though. But just generally, like it's been a good trade. I'm quite happy with it.
And the plan remains unchanged.
The plan remains unchanged. I want to see meme numbers. I want to see 420, 690,
999,
like 589.
Oh Jesus! Oh,
any of those numbers.
That's classic.
Any of those numbers, I'm down with. Until we get a meme number, I shall be
waiting for
bullish.
more alleged crime.
Yeah, and with the XRP coins that I have, I mean, I'm just basically what I'm planning is just waiting for the market to just turn fully idiotic,
right.
And just dumping everything. And I'm probably going to do the same with XRP. I don't really have an upside target, like besides the meme numbers, whatever. I think, and I still think there's like It's not necessarily much more than 50% chance that it happens, but I think there's a chance that we're gonna see like a retail frenzy, and I could see it be led by XRP. And basically, if you start seeing that happen, like the holder numbers explode, like a bunch of people basically buy, and just kind of like everything goes crazy, and you see it all over social media. That's kind of my signal to exit, like both the XRP trade, the XRP coin trade, all of that. That's my plan. Like I said, I don't think it's a given that that's happening. I just think basically, I mean, I'll figure out a way to sell on the downside. Like if it doesn't happen and we start going down, I'm not gonna round trip it basically back to 0.6.
It'd be pretty hard at this point, no?
Yeah, I mean it's up like 6x, 5x, 6x from there. So it's basically like I'm not gonna round trip it that hard. And I think the potential when it does happen would be great enough. And then if you start flipping ETH, if you start like getting close to Bitcoin market cap, and that's happened in 2017 when it went completely stupid, then I'm gonna be more than willing to just dump it. Like the flip of ETH, I think would not surprise me one bit. That's like it's like 30-40% away. It's really not that much.
Looks great for the space,
FTB. Huh? Yeah, I mean, I think this is like, don't get me wrong, like because people are always getting upset at me and they're like, you're promoting XRP. I don't like XRP. Like I straight up, I mean, we've talked about XRP, right? Like for years now. You know what I think about XRP. Like it's, I call it crime cycle for a reason, right? Like I don't like these people. I don't like the coin. But in this instance, I'm just a trader, right? Like, and I see potential, so I'm just like, okay, fuck it. But I'm gonna be quite happy dumping it. And I mean, like I said, it's up a shitload. So don't like top last $3.3 because I was bullish at 60 cents, bullish at $2, and now bullish at $3.
Do you think you give yourself enough credit for that call, by the way? Because like one of the cycle's best performers straight up, and there's both a call and a trade and updates and everything. You know, I think I could think of a lot of people on different social media apps we use that would dick ride themselves on a daily basis for a fraction of this. Obviously, that's not explicitly in your personality, but it feels like, I mean, this is a pretty fucking big win, and
it is.
Good for you. Here are the props that you've been waiting for, because no one else will acknowledge it. Well done, good on you.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the money on the bank account is the biggest props you can get, so it doesn't really matter. And I mean, I have cloud chased, like I have cloud farmed and like posted about XRP, but my biggest enjoyment out of like, I don't necessarily want the cloud. I just like, I love how upset people are. So like the Twitter posts that I make about it. The Twitter posts that I make about it are like 90% just because people are so mad about it, and then 10% just because, I mean, I called it right. The cloud chasing is the least important one. Like the most important one is I'm making money. Second most important one is that I'm pissing people off, and then like very, very far down the line, it's like, okay, cloud chasing. Which is always nice, right? Like when you're right and you can tell people that you were right. It's always good.
I wouldn't know.
Fuck off.
But yeah, the troll bait engagement farm industry is working very well for you. You forgot to mention the X payments. That's what you meant by money in the bank account, right?
I mean, the X payments, like full transparency. I don't think you're allowed to talk about this. I know that you're not allowed to talk about it on YouTube, like what you make on YouTube, but like I got like when it was active, I got like $100, $150 per month. So
legend, almost as much as Tiffany Fong.
Yeah. So if Elon is sexually interested in you, you get quite a lot more. Yeah. But he apparently doesn't have much sexual interest in me, so I never got much.
It's his loss. I've got enough for both of us, you know. Yeah, that's XRP. I mean, fuck all this change. Talked about it last week as being like, yo, this thing still looks insane, and then it proceeded to break out. Is there any updated?
Call,
well, it was more of a holy shit and nothing to talk about because it still looks strong, right? Which kind of is a call. In any case, is there any updated invalidation on this, or just kind of updated context? You think if it should realistically hold the previous range / breakout level?
Yeah,
right?
Never below $2 again.
Never below $2 again. Okay.
like that would look awful.
I mean, this thing hasn't made you sweat much the entire time, right? Like
at
the
all,
60
not
cent
at all.
breakout
Yeah.
went vertical, then it went sideways with zero drawdown, up, sideways with zero drawdown, again, up mega, and then this range was slightly longer, now it's breaking out again. Like there's no, like, unless you're unbelievably impatient, or you're getting liquidated on those wicks because you're at like 50x or something, there's really, there really haven't been any fake out signals or anything to make you question this thing, aside from just, yourself. I think you're your own biggest enemy in these types of trades.
100%. I mean, I sold it once during the rally, and then I had to rebuy like a little bit higher, not much. I got quite lucky on that, but a little bit higher. I mean, the only thing that made me sweat basically is because I was like, holy fuck, I'm up so much so quickly. What the fuck? And then you look at your P&L and you look at kind of like, you're like, what if this goes in one, like, that would suck, right? Like if this went in one day, and then you kind of like me, you're like, okay, fuck it, I'll take some profit. And then you're like an hour later, you're like, I'm an idiot. Like, this is gonna go higher, and then you just rebuy it again. For me, it took a little bit longer than an hour, but still, like, just generally, I think that's the one that makes you sweat the hardest. Where you're like, holy shit! When it goes up this vertically, you kind of like tend to sit there, be like, I don't deserve this much money all at once. And then you're kind of like starting to doubt, like, hey, I should take some profit. Like, this is silly. But and my thesis, like, when I posted about it at 0.6, right? Like, I actually had like a level all the way up to like $5 or something, $5.90, I think, or something of that sort. And I was like, I could see, like, if enough crime is committed, that's kind of where I could see this go. And then when it gets to those levels, it's so absurd because that's such a large multiplier where you're like, you want to sell earlier. That's, I think, the one where I was sweating the hardest, just because I was like, I'm holding a scam and I'm up like 4x. Do I actually
one of the biggest major altcoin, essentially?
If this was like if this was a shit coin that with like $100,000 market cap, if you're up at 4x, you're like, I mean, that makes sense, right? But if you're up at 4x on the, like, pretty much the third biggest cryptocurrency in the world,
and in like no time too, in a matter of weeks, like this whole trade is insane, to be honest.
Yeah, it's completely
every part of
nuts.
this trade.
So it's kind of like, that's the hardest part.
Yeah. I haven't been in like that type of fast position in like a while now. I remember on Sol, I think it was, like, catching a portion of that. Now it was a long time ago, but when you're basically catching a breakout, the feeling is always like you start catastrophizing and then euphoria maxing on both sides. Because you're like, okay, well, this is going to retrace in one candle and I'm fucked. Like, what the fuck? This thing just went straight up. I'm going to sell some because this is stupid. And then the euphoria side is like, yo, this is like the best chart in crypto. It looks fucking sick. I'm looking for objective reasons to get rid of it and I can't find any. You kind of get pulled by both extremes. At least that's been my experience. You simply can't have like a moderate, or it's very hard to have a moderate view of the market when the price action looks like that. Because it either makes you just think it's literally it's like a honeypot, or it's world changing. There's no in between with that type of stuff. It's very hard to just keep your trader cool. Like, well, yes, this is a technical breakout. The level is holding. The RSI. Like, nobody fucking thinks in those terms when the chart looks like this.
No, you cannot. Like,
you can't.
Like, if you've sized into something, and like that's the crazy part about this XRP like trade, just generally, or like that move, is that you can size, like, I mean, I can put all the size I want into this thing, right? Like, sure. XRP is big enough. Whereas like when you're talking about like small coins, you don't, right? And you also don't want to, because downside risk, like, you don't want to put like a large chunk of what you have into like a meme coin with like a tiny market cap, and then be at the mercy of basically the developer and like and his friends that sniped the launch. Whereas with XRP, like, buying like 0.6, 0.5, like, the risk that you take that it goes to zero is basically non-existent. Like, the SEC sued XRP during like a very, very bad time frame for crypto, and that thing still didn't go to zero, right? So your downside risk on that front is not as aggressive as it is elsewhere. So if you get the same gains as you get on like fucking tiny market cap shitters on something where the risk that you're just taking it to zero is very minimal, It's excellent. Like those are the kind of trades that you want to look for. And
Very rare.
Sol was similar. I think the XRP trade and the Sol trade are pretty much the same thing. Like Sol from $20 to $100. We talked about it on the show, but both didn't take it. Like idiots.
Yeah,
You took
morons.
some of it, I think, but I
No,
didn't.
dude, I fucking treated it like a trade, idiot that I am.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, yo, this is. Thing is, do you remember like at the fucking bottom, I was like, oh, fucking Solana comeback story and all this type of
Oh,
shit.
literally
And
at
I'd
the
always
bottom
argue
too.
with you, being like, oh, you should put Solana and like maybe BNB in the same basket of altcoins that'll come back. And I still traded it like a fucking baby pips idiot, as opposed to being like,
Yeah.
this is just a hilariously mispriced asset. Yeah.
Yeah, me, I was fading Solana like until it hit like $20, and I was like, okay, I mean, this is like that's a really good bounce, and now you wanna like actually be bullish it. But I was like, I don't want to hold any awkwards, and I was very right on that front, right? Where do you remember this discussion when we were like at 16, 17, 18K? I was like, hey, I really just don't want to hold altcoins because the Bitcoin trade just seems so good.
I remember that.
And the altcoins really didn't do so well. But I also said like, hey, Solana actually, like if I had to hold an altcoin, Solana is the one. And then Solana just like giga outperformed everything. And I would have made so much more money if I just held Solana instead of Bitcoin. But that's just like I was right on my thesis that altcoins were not gonna keep up with Bitcoin. Best case in point was ETH just going down against Bitcoin the entire way up. But I was like, I could have still taken advantage of my feeling that Solana was the best altcoin available. But now I've made up for it, at least in my mind, because I got pretty much the exact same trade.
The XRP trade from 0.6 is just fucking crazy. That's like a kingmaker trade, you know?
Yeah. And the cool part is that it was not while Bitcoin was moving. So I wasn't really missing out on anything, right? Because the Solana trade, like if you traded Solana from $20 to $100, you didn't get Bitcoin from 16K to like 100K. You got the Solana trade, which was better, but it was at the same time as Bitcoin was going up. The cool part about the XRP trade was that, like, I mean, basically nothing moved and XRP just went to infinity, which is quite cool. But yeah, enough now. Yeah, now we've glazed enough. Now I feel dirty.
Disgusting.
Disgusting.
There are no other tickers that I think. I mean, look, everything's going up because, well, Doge. Yes, we talked about it briefly.
Doge.
I mean, that's kind of a proximity to all-time high type of thing going on
I think
as well.
It's just bullish.
Yeah,
like you look on Doge USD and go on the monthly on Doge USD, and I mean, ignore the fact that if you take the all-time high that we closed below it, like the all-time high close, but it's kind of like box out the green candle between like 0.2 and 0.27. That's the chart that I have. We basically retested it, and Doge was one of the stronger coins just generally. We're gonna have Elon basically in the White House, quite literally. As far as I understand, he might actually just be in the White House, which is hilarious. President Elon. But is what it is. Anyway, like he loves Doge. He probably still owns a bunch. I'd be shocked if he didn't. So I think that's just a decent bet. Like I said, that has some implications on the meme coin sector. I've shit-talked it for the longest time. I think there's a good chance that you see, like, as long as Dogecoin holds up, that you see a little bit of a resurgence of it. The meme coins have gone down hard enough that there's like a 2x available without them actually getting even bullish, which is quite funny. But yeah, that's kind of my thinking on Doge. I don't know how you look at it. Just generally looks quite strong to me. Like as long as the market stays up, I think Dogecoin is also a good bet. Like XRP is excellent. Dogecoin looks quite good. There's a few more, like Litecoin's been looking excellent, and the reason for that is that it's getting an ETF almost guaranteed. And the chatter is quite loud on that front. Like I've heard it from a lot of sources now that there's a good chance that Litecoin gets an ETF, and people are basically positioning for it. I've also seen a bunch of people on Twitter, like bigger guys, actually kind of hint towards them being positioned on Litecoin. So I could see like Litecoin being one that gets shilled a bunch in the near future.
How
But
quickly
yeah,
things fucking changed from...
it's insane, dude.
Yeah,
1
even in a
week.
week, because last week things kind of looked shit. At least there was enough foresight to some extent on this show to be like, well, just wait for a washout and see what happens then. Realistically,
Yeah.
but like, I mean, the sentiment flip of this in this past week in particular was, I think, very extreme, more
Yeah.
extreme than usual. I think there was really a lot of real fear and basically, I think a lot of market participants had already written off the range low as holding with
Yeah.
the probability of a washout. I was like, okay, well, like this thing is fucking cooked, and look out below type of thing. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is like
I
a
gotta say,
full
like,
reversal.
full transparency. Like, I also thought it would go low. I just was like, I'm not gonna like.
Yeah,
And this is something that how I ended the last Friday, Sean, was like, I'm not selling,
yeah,
because I think
exactly.
it's going higher. But I was like, I could easily see this wash out proper. It didn't wash out properly. It washed out a little bit,
Sufficiently,
and
yeah,
yeah,
clearly.
sufficiently. But I mean, I personally thought was a good chance that it would go like a little bit lower. I
I
thought
thought
it
it'd
would
go
go up
deeper as well.
upwards.
That was kind
Um,
of my base case, but it just
yeah, but
hasn't been recently. It's just not
yeah,
how this thing has been um, trading. Because like we compared to the 60K, and I mean that did wash out properly, but it took fucking ages. So I thought it would
forever. Yeah,
either, I thought it would take either longer or just be more aggressive off the bat. But it ended up being like quite mellow in the grand scheme of things. Just previous month's low, previous week's low, the old spike, and that's it. It's enough. But I think the speed of it is what's caught a lot of people off guard. Clearly, as you can tell by the chart, with a lot of covering and buying back going on. But
yeah.
such is the market, And on the ETH front, we didn't even fucking talk about ETH USD, which is hilarious. I put
I'm,
that weekly level at 2,900, and that's a nice looking
I'm
weekly
such
there.
a Chad. No,
Yeah, well,
I didn't buy it though.
I didn't.
I didn't like. I got a lot of people and like messaging me being like, hey dude, like thank you so much for like the 2.9k level. You talked
These
about it
are
for
all my
so
alt
long.
accounts to make you feel better, Don. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
thanks.
You just needed the boost.
I appreciate it. Whether it's your or coins or alt accounts or anyone else's, I mean, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anyway, like a bunch of people DM'd me being like, oh, thank you so much. Did you buy it? And I'm like, I've just been holding, dude. Like,
Yeah.
like I've literally just been sitting here. I've been holding XRP. I've been holding ETH. I've been dabbling in other things, but that's about it. And I bought as much as I wanted. So I was not like, I wasn't gonna add. If it went a little bit deeper, I might have. I get into these moods like when I have a good position, right? Like a decent sized position, and the market is so stupid that it makes me angry. I oftentimes add where I'm like, this is just like at this point you're just throwing money away. Like these people are being dumb, and that didn't really happen this time around. The market didn't go low enough. Like if Bitcoin went to like 85, 80k, I think like at that point I would have just gotten annoyed with how stupid people are. And then I would have added. If ETH went to 2.7, 2.8, and then closed back above 2.9, this when I would have added. But like this, I was just like, I have enough, and I'm not too unhappy about it. Doesn't really concern me too much. I'm just happy that a bunch of people basically got the bottom of it because we talked about it so much. Which
You
is
should
quite
send
cool.
us
Like,
money, is what you're saying. That's all I can hear.
yeah, exactly. No,
Oh,
no.
man.
If you make money, don't send it to us. Like, donate it to a good cause. I think that's the coolest
I don't
part.
know. I'm a pretty fucking good cause, don't you think?
Fair enough.
Speak for yourself, man, dude.
Cred's gonna put his donation address in the video
Yeah.
description.
Venmo, Cash App, OnlyFans, all that good stuff. Some of the altcoin sort of retests still look a bit on the shit side.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of them went down so much that even this very green watch list hasn't fixed the chart entirely. But like, there wasn't much ambiguity as to what was strong, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And the strong stuff mostly kept up with it. XRP being like the most obvious example, and Pepe actually held up as well, which is nice.
I mean, Doge's up. Pepe is gonna do well, and I generally believe that to be the case.
Yeah, it's a sensible correlation.
Yeah,
Well,
going back
Solana,
to ETH.
by the way. Sorry, go on.
Going back to ETH for a brief second. I mean, we should talk ETH a lot, right? The ETH chart. But I mean, looking at the ETH USD chart, that's fucking insane. Like, there's such a good chart, which is hilarious, right? Because the ETH BTC chart is such a piece of shit. But you look at ETH USD, like that looks hilariously bullish to me. It's just underperforming Bitcoin, and that's why everyone's just losing their minds. ETH USD is an excellent chart, and no one can convince me otherwise. It looks even better now that it retested 2.9.
It just needs to
what
fucking break out, dude. This 4K level has been a...
Yeah, but I mean, that makes it even better. Like the fact that we've tested it like 10 times. If you go back there, like at some point, I think it's gonna surprise people. It's
Please.
just, probably. I think the next test of 4K is probably gonna just rip, and then you're gonna go from 4 to like 6K in like a weekly candle, and people are gonna be like, where the fuck is this coming from? And the answer is like all the frustration and pent up like positions, and all the people that feel very secure about like selling 4K every time just gonna get run over. But for that, we need to get to 4K first.
Yeah.
But I think this time, like, there's no way in my mind that we're testing it again and don't break. So that's like, because I didn't want to end it on like, okay, we should talk ETH BTC for like 5 minutes.
True.
And ETH still looks insane. And there's a few charts like this where the USD pairs right now look insane, while the Bitcoin pairs don't. And I think when you have like a really, really good USD pair setup, it can snap back the Bitcoin pairs quite easily. Whereas basically you get a breakout on the USD pair, and suddenly that breakout accelerates hardcore because basically the Bitcoin pair does a mean reversion. Doesn't really have to do much. And the XRP chart that we showed earlier, the XRP monthly chart, that's basically what it does, right? That's a mean reverse. So far, we've reverted to the mean on XRP. And that's like a 5x.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
So
no, it's a very valid point. And I think, I mean, it'll be an interesting trade at 4K ETH nonetheless, if it gets there, because, I mean, look, you don't get levels like this too often. I think you're duty bound to trade them one way or another, you know? Tell your grandkids, I traded ETH at 4K, and they say, is that way we live in a fucking shoebox? At least you have a story behind it, you know? The only one we haven't mentioned is Solana.
Yeah.
Don't know if you have any thoughts there.
I mean, it's a Trump coin, right? Like, I mean,
apparently,
yeah. Apparently, I mean, they're all living in Dubai, right? So as long as no one tells Trump that they're all Dubai people, I mean, if it's considered a US coin, it's on the Trump list. I could see it do well, right? Like, I mean, that's a good enough narrative, I think, for it to do well. Chart wise. We talked about this monthly basically false breakout.
Yeah,
it's trading a little bit above it, and I think if it trades above it and closes above it, I mean, I'm not going to be bearish Solana. I also said last week basically that I think ETH and Solana are a little bit in the same boat. I still think that's the case. Like ETH goes up, Solana goes up. I don't think Solana goes up. I think ETH goes up. I don't really think they're gonna necessarily. You're gonna see a solo runner on this, but the fact that Trump is mentioning, allegedly at least mentioned Solana as one of the US coins, I think that's a good narrative to have in your pocket. Like I said, if you see Trump be on stage and he mentions Solana 10 times, I mean, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily even because normies are going to buy it, right? It's just because a bunch of crypto people are going to buy it on leverage.
Pumped on leverage, exactly. Yeah.
Going to get a big pump.
Well, the thing is, like, you don't need narratives to be real for them to have like real market impact. Like a lot of 2021, I mean, sure, towards the end there was a bunch of like fraud and a massive credit bubble and all that type of stuff. But a lot of the early 2021 narrative was the idea that it was going to be the institutional cycle for BTC. And how like, oh, Tesla put it on their balance sheets, and now it's time for every company's going to do it. They're going to have a Bitcoin strategy. The institutions are coming, pension fund, sovereign fund. And like none of it was true. It was just like basically Michael Saylor. But that narrative, I mean, lifted us for a few multiples at the very least. And then it acted as the precursor to the Ponzi fraud, credit bubble, GBTC, FTX, like the whole thing, right? But like you can have a very effective narrative without it being rooted in reality. Like you could say like XYZ is buying, and if crypto natives sort of believe it enough and actually buy on the assumption that it will come true, it doesn't actually matter whether it comes true or not, because then you're going to be dealing with a different set of latent narratives and circumstances, so on and so forth. Like I think 2021 is just like a very good example. The whole institutional thing is just made up. But if you look at the market, you'd never be able to tell because we went up like a shit ton from that point. I think that's all I've got. I mean, we'll probably title this one the same as last week, but like we're so back. I think that'd be quite funny.
That would be quite funny, yeah.
Across the board, pretty good snapback. Washout was shallow, but it was enough. I mean, it did clear out like all the weekly lows that we'd set in the last couple of months. So I don't want to understate it too much. Like, that is a technical washout in one sense or another. Some things stronger than others, but I don't think there are any huge surprises there. It's like stuff that's generally been strong is fastest horse, yada, yada, yada. Nothing too interesting sector-wise. XRP is kind of in its own sector, in its own world. In terms of stuff to look out for, on the BTC front, I mean, ideally just break out and go and fuck off so we don't repeat the 60k range. And if you're watching at home, that means that you're watching the breakout essentially, which is 106, 108k, depending on body or wick. And if things start getting dicey or it looks a bit shit, it really shouldn't be going sub 98-ish, I think was the level. 98, 99, because that's the former range high, yada, yada. You know, we've given it every reason, including a washout, to go up. So if that's not good enough, then maybe we're stuck in a range for a bit longer. And with the relevant context that with the inauguration coming up, if you want to get a sense of, and I think this is always good to do, you can infer a decent amount about positioning based on how the market responds to news. And I think the inauguration qualifies as one such news event where you can get a pulse for the market. Is it under-owned? Is it over-owned? Is it sell the news? Is it a news trade at all, right? Sometimes we've seen this before where something gets indexed a lot as like a big mover in the market, like, oh, it's because of X news event, but it kind of does fuck all and the market shakes it off and keeps going. But that's still useful information. So in any case, the inauguration is kind of the closest thing on the calendar to fall under that umbrella. Anything else?
No, well said.
Cool.
I mean, we've had a big run up on ETH BTC in the last hour since we shit talked it. So
you're welcome.
So I mean, we're back. We're so back.
Oh my god, who turned on the TV? This 1 minute is generational.
Yeah, this is generational bottom before ETH goes to infinity.
It's one of the strongest things I've ever seen. Look at the 5 minute. Wow.
Yeah, insane.
Stunning.
Just
red candles. I think Trump banned red candles in ETH BTC.
Yeah.
There's got to be some sort of upcoming executive order leak.
Dude, all of Trump's sons own like infinite amounts of ETH, so he's gonna have to pump their backs at one point or another.
Wasn't like one of the crypto guys like the. Oh god, no! Never mind. I don't want to get sued. Whatever. We can talk about it offline.
Now everyone's gonna be so.
I know. I'm sorry. That's all.
But I'll take it. I'll take it offline, and I will not tell anyone.
Okay. Yeah. We can chat about it.
Well,
we need to talk about the CT drama next week, but we managed to. Keep
which one?
Because, which one?
Dude, the Elon thing is killing me. The Elon gaming thing.
Oh my god.
Hilarious.
This is how you get banned. We're not going to talk about it either. Listen, we're just self-censoring for a bunch of European pussies. That's the moral of the story here. We need a First Amendment and decent defamation defenses to run this show properly. We have neither in Europe.
Yep.
Cool.
Well,
we'll
let's
shut up
end it on that.
Yeah, exactly. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Make sure to like this video before clicking off. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. What are you doing? Hope you have a wonderful weekend again, and we'll see you next week. And thank you to Woo for supporting the show. I don't know why they still do it, Dom, but they are still here launching cool stuff. Maybe we should get you into the social trading and do a counter trade Don XRP strategy. It would be quite fun. But if you're looking for a centralized exchange trading place and you care about transparency, so the two of you listening out of thousands, check them out and support the show. It's the most straightforward way of doing so. I'll shut up now. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.
Bye-bye.